if I look at your work here, we touched a little bit before, Björn, how do you see, if you look on, you're working with security issues in supply chain, how do you see the main effect has been here for what you have learned in terms of security and safety for supply chain?
We've, well, there's a few items that I would pick out. One we've discussed already at length, and I think for me it's going to be one of the lasting ones, and it's the role of the supply chain director, or in some constellations it's the purchase director, and the importance of building a security and resilience element into the day-to-day work and into the suppliers you pick, the mode of logistics you pick, how you plan for the future.
Yeah. Yeah. How do you see this? Has there been any impact? Have you seen in day-to-day among your clients and in terms of quality and capacity in China or other areas in Asia?
I think it impacted almost everything, but in terms of quality, I think the important decision was, how do we get hands on the product without being able to travel ourselves and without having the usual tools available to us. This was the situation for a lot of customers, that a lot of companies that we work with, and it meant having to find new ways of doing that, and it meant having to figure out how to be present by video conference in the factory, how to audit under circumstances that you wouldn't normally want to audit through a third party or through your partner company. Existing branches in China maybe, right? So, but it was an exercise in getting all hands on deck. Certainly make sure that the people you surround yourselves with and the companies you partner with are the ones that were willing to go the extra mile, were willing to think out of the box, willing to find out solutions. I think that was revealed quite early on in the crisis, who those companies were. And the successful directors that I saw maneuvering through this crisis were the ones who found those partners and make sure they worked closely and effectively with those people.
Yeah, well, that's good. I think it's a good summary, and it's good to hear your experience from this.
I'm getting a little bit nervous about Dorothy and our clock over here on the side of the room. Should we? Do you want to move on to some audience questions?
Yes, we do. We have to go there.
If you could read the questions to us, Dorothy, I think that would be great.
All right, now I'm waiting for the questions. They're too shy. I'm checking with the participants whether they have questions to the floor. Any questions?
Yeah, so please go ahead if you have questions, or if you have something that you want me and Stefan to talk about, preferably within the subject we're discussing today. Please go ahead and ask them now.
We have some friends here. David from Security Cargo Networks is here.
If do you, Björn, have any other experience you can share that how you work with these questions with your clients? Like,
well, one key component that I think we've recommended almost across the board is ask questions.
Yeah.
It sounds like a trivial approach, but it's really not. And then preferably you're able to ask the questions to your partners and suppliers in China and Asia before a crisis hits. But before, during, and after, it becomes more and more important. So don't be afraid to ask, how are they planning to deal with the crisis? Where are they planning to get key materials from? How are they planning to work out the logistics under new circumstances, right? If you can get it down on paper, even better, get hands on the ground, get your own staff in China, get trusted third parties, get your logistics partner to have a look at the factory. I mean, the fact is that if you have manufacturing in China, there are people in that supply chain that can help you. But make sure you know what your own questions are and what it is you would like to know.
I think, as we said before, it goes back a little bit to ask the question, learn and understand your supply chain on a deeper level, not just the first level, but on the next level as well. I think that's what we're going back to, and as we've seen, I think we all have gone through that in this process.
So, do we see any questions there, Dorothy?
Okay, from Anders, he's asking, do you feel there are more requests regarding sanitation in different steps of the supply chain?
Sorry, can you read that again?
Okay, the question is, do you feel there are more requests regarding sanitation in different steps of the supply chain?
You want to take that one?
Yeah, I think the whole health issue, it just shows how important it is. I think we will see more demands through the whole health, and it's for make sure that the goods are correct, people who travel are being healthy and so on. So I think it will have effect on us. We see it already. We just go to an airport, we see that. So I think we will see it more, and also maybe affect some of the cargo and some other parts of the supply chain, and make sure that we just see how important it is to have a plan for our office, that we don't spread it if something happens there. So I think it will go through the whole supply chain. Absolutely.
He follow up with, in terms of QC, sanitation of deliveries from factories. Do you see more requests in different steps of the supply chain?
We definitely see an increased awareness of the importance of sanitation and related areas outside the products where we usually see that. So this is, of course, this is already in place for certain industries, such as the food industry, medical supplies, and so on. We have seen an increased awareness in general for other industries as well. I can see a couple of potential positive knock-on effects from COVID-19, where there's just a general raising of the health standards in all factories, and really in Chinese society as a whole. I think we've seen. Now, I don't know for a fact that this will last more than people's memory of the crisis, really. But there might be an overall raise of the bar in that area.
Yeah. Well, I think we'll raise the bar, we'll raise the question. And I think it's also the QC also connects a little bit with the health as well. Especially we talk about, for example, we saw it in the Pbe products that increased hugely in demand. We saw some substandard material coming out, but we also saw some quick actions to try to rectify it. If they did fully or not, that's another discussion, but we actually saw a lot of actions to work with that. Yeah, we have some.
We have another question from Andrea. She's asking, do you think air freight market will suffer the most out of this situation? And will it ever return to standard capacity?
For the air freight market, for sure, as we said, that's the one who has got the most hit. And that is, of course, because this is hitting people's ability to travel, and because air freight is not like the other modes of transport, is combined with a lot of the cargoes and combined with the passenger flights. I think this will take time before we're back to travel as we used to do. And until we do that, we still will, I can't see that the capacity will be back until the people travel are back. And I think that will take time. But I think we will go through phases here without being a doctor. But I think we'll be taking some time before this is back. This year we're definitely not back, no doubt. Next year, I don't know.
When can I travel to China again, Stefan?
Good question.
It's really unfair of me to ask that. I know.
I don't know. But I think, we see now. We see at least the air freight capacity for the goods are somewhat recovering. It's still much lower, but also the demand is as well lower. So I think the trick will come when when demand is again increasing for a quick replenishment of stock, that we'll see some more problems coming back again.
Okay, there's a follow-up question from Steve. He's asking, do you see a decline in Pbe orders, which free place on air freight?
Yes, that is definitely happening. The urgent need of the PP is definitely coming down. I mean, we saw the huge rush that had us to see a lot of cargo very urgent the air freight. We saw a lot of passenger flights converted into cargo flights, where you basically put cargo in the seats, and it was working because the demand was very, very high. The governments needed this product very urgently and was prepared to pay very high premium for this. Now that is tailing off, the market coming down, but also the capacity is also much lower than normal. So that's why we still see high, but it's coming down. It's freeing up some capacity, and also some of this capacity that was there with this passenger converted freight. Of course, they can only operate when someone is prepared to pay these very high prices in a medical need. So it's releasing somewhat, but we still will not be back to normal for a long time.
I'm quite happy to see the crazy PPE rush subside again. For a moment, for about 3 weeks there in the middle, suppliers that really have no relation to medical or high standard medical grade products started to offer the kind of products that really are key to health and safety and for use in hospitals. One example is a long-term partner of ours, really, that we work with for steel products in Pbe, repurposed a whole section of their factory to produce face protection equipment. And this is heavy duty steel manufacturer that just overnight became a PPE supplier instead. And this is not the craziest story that we have. Equally common was to just offer these products and materials without actually having them. But just put up an online shop, sell them, take the money, and then go out and buy them yourselves.
Yeah.
So
I think we saw a lot of that coming through for sure. We saw the same. We saw a lot of requests coming in. But I think also we saw some actions, some cleaning up. But I think, of course, coming because it was such a huge demand in a short time frame.
Yeah.
Okay. And there's the last question from Carlos. He's from Spain. He's asking, is the financial crisis already here after the sanitary crisis, or are we expecting a financial crisis after our summer in Europe? What's your take on this question?
It's a very good question. I think I have to pass on that one because I'm in the supply chain. I'm not an economist, but I still see that. I still see recovery. I don't think the whole world is over yet, but I still see some recovery. We still see some business coming through as well. So I think we have seen, if we look on the supply chain and the transport, I think we have seen the low mark in Q2, and I think we are recovering and demands picking up in Q3 and Q4. That's what we're thinking at the moment, and then we will see if we were right, but I think so.
There's a couple of signs that we saw in 2008 and then the last financial crisis that we're so far not really seeing. So the great credit crunch that happened at some point mid-2008, we're not seeing any immediate signs of that. And rather, we might be seeing signs that the markets are picking back up.
Yeah.
For some industries, we are seeing a decrease in new loans and a new launch of new and financing of new big expansions and big projects. This will probably have a long-term effect for industries such as construction, for instance. This will play out over the next 3, 5 to 10 years. But what we want to look at there is how the banks act.
I think the difference here, the financial crisis was a financial crunch. This time it's actually something affecting people, and then in the secondary step will affect the economy. I mean, the assets are there, the economy was there. It's more like if the demand would come down.
I guess you could also look at the origin of the crisis, whereas COVID-19 really is, I mean, it was a hard to predict event, and it's a hard to understand problem, but it didn't necessarily cause a crisis of faith in that it was human made. The financial crisis 2008 was different in quality. It really caused a lack of trust in our systems as a whole, in the financial system. Now there again, I would argue that the COVID crisis is of a different quality.
Yeah, it is, and I think just shows still that assets are there. This is a more human crisis, and actually the supply chain has proven quite resilient.
Now,
yeah, thank you very much.
Oh,
Thank you.
okay. There's the last question from Rob. He's asking, can we see a decline in credit being given towards freight forwarders and also clients in return, the same way that airline requires payment upfront for PPE goods?
I think if we take on quick one, I think we have seen as an effect, a lot of people will talk about. I think sadly we have seen a crunch in the dealings between companies. A lot of companies try to hold on to the money, meaning to not necessarily push them forward in the system, means you do business, but everyone gets very afraid. And if that continues, of course, it can be self-fulfilling, that everyone is afraid of a financial problem. So we see that many business and many people talk to and many factories talk to that the credit times are getting a problem, and many companies are trying to hold on the cash for longer. That's what we see, and I think that's affecting everyone, and I think you all, most of you have seen the same.
good. With that, we're going to wrap up this session. Thanks everyone for joining, and thank you for participating, for your questions. And thanks, Stefan and Norman, for having me.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Björn. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. Please feel free to give us some feedback. We will send out the presentations and the comments and the polls. Thank you very much. We appreciate the time for coming here today. Thank you very
we'll
much.
see you again soon.
Thank
Bye,
you,
everyone.
Bye.